I've been lucky enough to have traveled from the West Coast to the East Coast, from Vancouver to Winnipeg, Toronto, and St. John's. And I've got to say, the place that felt like the warmest welcome, the place that reminded me the most of prairie hospitality, it was St. John's, Newfoundland. My friends and I found ourselves on George Street. We were at Trapper John's. I had maybe 1 or 2 beers extra than I usually have, and I was kissing a cod and trying to say the words, "Deed I is, me old cock, and may along your big jib draw." And I could not get those words out of my mouth. I was tripping up over my tongue and my lips, and then I got a big swat on the butt with a paddle, and everybody was laughing. During the last boom in Saskatchewan, many Newfoundlanders came west, and many of them kept saying how much they missed home, and I can't blame them. I love Newfoundland. Some of them did go home, but some of them stayed. Scott Coady is one of those who came, he left, he returned, and one of the things I'm happy he brought back with him was Mary Brown's, which is a Newfoundland favorite fried chicken spot, especially the Big Mary sandwich. It's the one with the pickle on top. Mary Brown's is this East Coast Newfoundland phenomenon, and it's slowly catching on here. And I think Scott will agree with me, but if you get the chance to take a bite of a Big Mary sandwich, you'll taste the difference compared to other chicken sandwiches. I have, and I'm a true believer, and now I want to let you know about Mary Brown's as well. Scott, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
So, before we get too far into Mary Brown's, today we're going to be drinking what's called Eclectic Mix. It's a dry hop by Blackbridge Brewery out of Swift Current. Cheers.
Sounds good. Cheers.
I haven't had this one in over a year. They've tweaked it a bit.
Mm-hmm. It's got a peachy flavor to it. It's real nice. It's nice and light. I'm a light beer drinker and usually don't like heavier beers, but this is really nice.
Have you had many sour beers before?
I don't know if I've ever had a sour beer. It's like nice and tart. It's almost citrusy, yeah.
Tropical citrus.
Yeah.
Peachy.
Sure. Yeah.
Well, you're pretty lucky if this is your first sour.
This is my very first sour, and it's yeah. And as you said, it's a really good one from Swift Current, eh?
Mm-hmm. It's one of their most popular high-rated beers in Untapped, and one of the most popular beers online.
You sell this out of your tap room as well?
Yeah, we brought it in.
Brought it in?
We usually try to bring in a keg of everything from Saskatchewan producers. So when it came to Blackbridge bringing back the Eclectic, I think it was a no-brainer.
Yeah. Well, I'll definitely have to stop in and partake. This one is really good. I like it. I like your lentil as well, but this is delicious.
Ooh, that's an aggressive peach flavor.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if you don't like peach, maybe not, but I like peaches, so that's quite good.
The brewmaster's notes say it's a 6.1% ABV, and what he's going for is intense peach and passion fruit aromas blended with some slight barnyard funk for a balanced, crushable brew. And I would say he's achieved that.
Yeah, it's a mouthful, but describes it really well.
Really juicy. Mm. Thumbs up, thumbs down?
I would say thumbs up, absolutely.
Deadly.
Coming from Newfoundland, when I left, craft brewing was just starting, just getting going. Right now, it's booming down there. I keep watching the news, and there's even news stories. But so I wasn't a real expert on any of the microbrews or craft brewing, but this is delicious. I like this a lot.
Well, I'm glad I got to introduce you to a new style of beer.
Absolutely.
Right here on the podcast.
Yep, and now I have to go back to the tap room and try all of yours too. I'm okay with that. I'll take on that challenge for sure.
So I gotta know, what is the Mary Brown's story? How did it all begin?
Mary is actually a real woman. She's from Virginia in the States. She had a recipe, and two gentlemen from Newfoundland went and spoke to her. I guess they bought the rights. I'm assuming they bought it. If she gave it to them, she's probably kicking herself now if she was alive. They brought it back to Newfoundland, opened it up as a golden skillet, and used that recipe quickly. Probably within a year, they turned it into a Mary Brown's because it was so popular. I guess they wanted to give the namesake some recognition, and so Mary Brown's Chicken and Taters was born.
What sets it apart from everybody else's?
Well, what makes us different? We do everything handmade, made fresh from scratch is our motto. We do everything in store. For example, we'll bring in whole fresh chickens from Prairie Pride in Saskatchewan. We buy local, fresh. We cut everything in store ourselves. We cut into a 9-piece cut. We marinate everything up to 48 hours. Which keeps the chicken juicy, tender, and the chicken actually has the flavor, not the breading, so you don't need all that salt in the breading. Even our Big Mary sandwiches, hand butterflied, our tenders, chicken tenders, all marinated, and our taters, our famous taters, they start the day as a potato, and they're hand cut, breaded like our chicken as well. And seasoned, and that's what really, it takes a lot more work, it takes a lot more time, but we think it's worth it.
So you're not looking at food that comes in tiny vacuum sealed packages. This is something that you guys are...
Yes, no frozen patties just dumped into a deep fryer. Yeah, everything is made fresh from scratch. That makes a world of difference. It's the difference between homemade and just processed food, really.
I was noticing when I was eating your chicken, it wasn't super heavy and greasy, and it didn't have my fingers feeling all greasy. It was a better kind of crunch.
The marination process is a big part of that. That locks in the juiciness of the chicken, and we cook also with our cookers. We use a much lower pressure. They're not high pressure cookers. We use heat instead of the high pressure. So it makes for a much better product. And again, we try to knock as much breading off as possible. That breading is just for accent flavor. Our chicken is what has the flavor, and we rest our chicken. So when our chicken comes out of our cookers, you rest it a proper way. All that oil it comes off, and you have a much better product. Yes.
Now, I'm going to be really clear to our listeners. I have not been paid to have you on the show. I'm just actually a really big fan of Mary Brown's chicken.
Well, so am I, actually. But
So tell me about this getting off the airplane story, because it's not just me who's a fan. It's everybody else.
Well, Newfoundlanders have a real connection with Mary Brown's. It's I tell the story a lot, and a lot of Newfoundlanders the same way. They go away for work, and they travel home whenever they can. Most of the time it's Christmas. You head home to see family at Christmas. The first stop after when you get off the plane in St. John's, you head for Mary Brown's, and you probably have it once or twice in the week or 2 weeks that you're home, and then before you get back on that plane to head back to wherever you're going, and that's your last stop. You grab yourself a Big Mary or some taters on the way to the airport. Especially if you're not from Edmonton or Mississauga, where there's a bunch of Mary Browns. If you're like me back a couple of years ago and there was no Mary Browns in Saskatchewan, that's what you had to do.
Do you draw a lot of Newfoundland expats into Regina who maybe are missing a taste of home?
Absolutely. We get people driving 3-4 hours actually just for the chicken. They'll come, sit, have meals. In fact, weekly we've got a couple of couples that come maybe 2 to 3 hours away, and they live in small town Saskatchewan. They come and sit and have a bite to eat, make it a day, go shopping, and stop in and grab another 18-piece feast on the way home to even freeze or have for lunches the next week. Yeah.
So do you dip in a little bit of Newfoundland slang with them when you see them coming in?
Oh, absolutely. As soon as they come through the door, yeah. I usually can turn off my accent pretty good, but when I'm talking to another Newf, definitely that it comes out for sure.
They come in, maybe they say, "What are you at?"
Oh yeah, what are you at? And how you getting on? Absolutely. Oh yeah, this is it. What are you at? This is it.
What's your favorite Mary Brown story so far? I'm sure you've got a million.
Absolutely, yeah. I think we're pretty proud. We do a lot of food drops and food donations to Habitat for Humanity for their volunteers. We do that on a monthly and a weekly basis sometimes. We do a lot of support for Cancer Society or cancer runs and other charities. We do a ton of auction prizes for just about everyone, but if anyone's putting off an event, especially for cancer awareness or even Humane Society, any of those charities, we always try to step up and support. What we do have is lots of food, and we can always feed volunteers and always put some goodies into some grab bags for them as well. Yep.
I've said it before, I've said it again, Newfoundland, St. John's is like home away from home. I felt a lot of love and warmth and hospitality. Does that kind of ethos inform what you're doing here in Saskatchewan?
I think that's the philosophy that I've kind of instilled in our employees. They know how crazy I am about our customer service and making our customers feel at home. I would say 50% of our customers are regulars, if not more, and all of them we know by name. We ask them about their day. We have conversations. All my staff have been there quite a long time. We don't have much turnover. We have great staff, and every day we see the same people over and over again. We ask them how they're doing, how's their daughter, or how's their family, or you got a new car, or it's very I guess it's very East Coast to be hospitable and to bring you in. If you're in Newfoundland, you're in my hometown, and we met. You were driving through and you looked like a tourist or looked like a mainlander, we'd say, how you doing, what are you doing, and bring you in, maybe even bring you home for a meal or at least for a shed party. And I think that's the mentality that I'm trying to instill in our staff too, that we're really over and above when it comes to friendliness, much like home.
One of my favorite things I did, one of my favorite memories was going to this place called Trapper John's. I got to kiss the cod, and I couldn't get the words out, and I got spanked with a paddle, and everybody's laughing.
Yes, absolutely. And they yelled at you, "Are you a screecher? Are you a screecher?" And you probably tried to say, "Indeed I is me old cock, and long may your big jib draw."
Long may your big jib draw, that's right. I can never get it right.
and that's yeah. Well, it just happens that I used to work at Trapper John's and probably screeched in thousands of people over my university days. Yeah, it's now I know that George Street has several other screeching bars as well, but George Street's a fantastic, wonderful place, as you can probably attest to.
I loved it. I liked going to this place called Lottie's.
The home of the White Russian.
You could double fist White Russians.
Absolutely. That's usually the primer bar for the rest of George Street. Everyone hits George Street and goes to Lottie's for some White Russians and then heads up the street to their favorite watering hole. But George Street's quite amazing. It's got the most bars per square feet in North America. I believe there's bars in the basement, bars in the main level, and there could be bars on top of that in the third story as well. But it's quite a sight to see, and it's definitely on anyone's bucket list if you're heading to the East Coast. They do a George Street Festival and a Mardi Gras where they close off the street and turn it into a big concert venue, and you come in one end or the other, and then you just bar hop the rest of the night. You'll never make it to all the bars. There's just too many. And
it's kind of becoming a craft beer destination, is it not?
Absolutely. When I left, I don't know, 5-6 years ago, just starting to take off at that time. Now I've seen some news footage and seen some news stories about how it's really taken off. Even the small towns have microbrews and small breweries and craft brew. A lot of them are winning awards for their creations, and yeah, apparently it's really taken off. So next time you're back, you'll definitely have a new touristy thing to do. So try out every new craft beer down there.
Hit Mary Brown's, get some great local craft beer.
Absolutely.
Get screeched in Trapper John's.
Oh, that's the way to go. Yep.
So I've got to ask you, I've heard people say it both ways. They say that saying Newfie is a bad word, and they say, hey, it's okay if you're a Newfie. Where do you fall?
I personally don't care. It doesn't bother me at all. I can understand why some people don't like the word, but I think it's for example, if I called you a Flatlander, you're a Flatlander. You're from a land that's flat. That's not a big deal. But if I called you probably a stupid Flatlander, you might be a little upset. So if you probably put that word in front of Newfie, then there's going to be some people upset. I would probably be upset as well. But for me, Newfie is just another word. It's how we describe ourselves, and it's a kind of a funny word. And if Newfoundlanders are nothing if they're not funny, we are the ones that probably tell the most Newfie jokes, and we love to laugh at ourselves. That's for sure. We've got no problem with our sense of humor.
I love Newfoundland. I love the people, the culture. I think if I wasn't here in Saskatchewan, that would be where I'd have to go. Why does it feel like home when I'm in Newfoundland?
I see a lot of similarities in Saskatchewan and Newfoundland. Instead of you got the small town hospitality here, the same thing in Newfoundland. Instead of fishermen, you got farmers, and farmers are always hard done by. Fishermen have always had something to complain about, and I think the farmers have had, hard times is a constant theme throughout farming every year. There's drought, or there's too much rain, or there's not enough rain, or there's too many hoppers, or God knows what. In Newfoundland, it's the same thing. We've got weather, we've got no fish, moratoriums. There's a million things that can go wrong on the East Coast for sure. Snowstorms and hurricanes and God knows. So I think it's very, very similar. I find that the hospitality down in Newfoundland, the friendliness of the people, is just as prevalent in Saskatchewan, and God knows we love our beer the same as you Sasky boys do, for sure.
So what's coming up next for you? What can people expect out of Mary Brown's on the Prairies?
From what I see is Mary Brown's has a large growth, very aggressive growth plan. Alberta is very well developed. BC is moving along much faster pace. So I think Saskatoon, Regina, and even all the smaller cities across Saskatchewan, you're going to see Mary Brown's expand pretty aggressively. I don't see, probably within 3 to 4 years, you're probably going to have another 3, 4, 5 locations, if not more. I believe
in Saskatchewan.
In Saskatchewan, for sure. You could probably do 3 or 4 in Regina alone, and probably the same in Saskatoon. But all your smaller towns, Yorkton and Weyburn and Estevan and Swift Current and Moose Jaw, they could all definitely use a Mary Brown's. And we're looking for locations. We're always scouting, and ideally we would like to find something with some drive-thrus too for convenience. But cross fingers. Can't say anything yet, but we're working on it for sure.
Well, Scott, I want to thank you for coming on to the show today.
Well, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Rebels, thanks for tuning in this week. If you want to find the latest news about Rebellion Brewing, be sure to check us out on Facebook, Instagram, and Untapped. Thank you for joining the Rebellion.